Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was bound to a forbidden destiny in the depths of hell? If you enjoy dark alternate Naruto stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell me your predictions in the comments. Now, let's enter the darkness. I said I was gonna start a new has-been hotel FIC, and by the gods I'm gonna do it. It took me a bit to try and figure out what exactly I wanted to have Naruto be until I settled on this. Honestly, I think it's kinda neat and it leaves way more room for flexibility compared to other options. But enough talk. Enjoy. Are you sure about this, sir? Moxie asked as each step of his hooked feet let out an echo down the cavern they found themselves in. He held the gun in his hands tightly as they could barely see through the almost supernatural darkness. Oh, shut it, Moxie, we got a job to do and I have expenses, Blitzo replied, muttering the last part as he led his team deeper into the cavern. The sinner who had hired them had offered them so much money for this job that he could never turn it down, even if he refused to tell them who he was going to kill, just where he was. Still, this is a weird place for a target. Millie commented that she was more couscous than she'd normally be. Something about this place made her hair stand on edge. So we snuck into the basement of some abandoned temple on the side of a mountain in a creepy forest in Japan. Who cares? Money is money. Blitzo replied, knowing that he'd spent the last of their funding on his hobbies and this job offered more than enough to bring them into the green. Sir, I think this is more than a basement, Moxie reported before they reached the bottom of the steps and entered a massive chamber. Ignoring his employee, Blitzo brought his gun up and smirked. All right, I know you're in here. Come out and we can make this quick, he called out. None of them expected the deep growl that shook the ground they stood on. A gust of hot wind blew the three imps back. Twin slitted blue eyes opened in the darkness before rising up into the air, followed by the unveiling of a massive set of sharp white teeth. Blitzo cursed before the creature roared, blowing their back against the stone walls of the underground temple. Lanterns came to life around the chamber. Millie gulped as she was the first to recover and look upon their target, a titanic golden fox with 9 equally large tails. What in tarnation? Millie questioned in a panic. It was larger than even the biggest critter she'd ever seen back in Wrath. Who cares? Shoot it, Blitzo ordered, unloading his assault rifle on the creature. Moxie aimed at its head and shot his sniper at the fox's face. It almost seemed to laugh at them as it sat back, the bullets bouncing off its golden fur. Ya know, I wasn't expecting to wake up again so soon, the fox said in a casual tone. It clearly wasn't taking any of them seriously. Millie rushed with her axe at the colossal creature's feet, attempting to slash its heels only for her axe to break on contact. Millie cursed as a tail wrapped around her and lifted her up into the air. Millie, put my wife down, Moxie yelled, shooting at the golden beast. Geez, just put the damn weapons away and no one has to die, it complained, throwing Millie down at Blitzo with the casual flick of its tail. A bazooka hit his face but did nothing but tick off the monster. Ha! Suck on da! A massive claw came down right beside the bigger imp, nearly crushing him in a split second, freezing the demon in fear. He looked at the demon in the eyes and saw it smirking down at him, its killing intent filling the room. Book it! Blitzo shouted. The three imps ran towards the exit, Blitzo desperately calling his phone. Portal now, he shouted in desperation as the fox moved to follow them. A portal opened on the ground in front of them. The three leapt in, returning to hell without looking back. What's going on? A gray-furred female hellhound asked, a bit concerned by how fear-stricken the three were. Just close the portal, Luna, Blitzo ordered. The portal began to close, but before it could, 2 clawed hands came out and gripped the edges. Sparks began to fly from the portal as it was forcefully stretched open. A figure stepped out from the other side, revealing a tall human-looking male with spiky blonde hair with 2 rabbit-like ears poking out. Behind it, 9 golden tails swayed gently. The man was tanned with 3 marks on each cheek. He wore an orange kimono with a red swirl on its back. First you wake me up, then shoot at me, and you think you can run away like nothing happened? The blonde questioned, arms crossed with an annoyed look on his face. Luna questioned, annoyed that she had no idea what was going on. His presence made her fur stand on edge. He seemed to fill the room with the feeling of being in front of overwhelming power. She silently noted that he was pretty hot. Damn, those arms are jacked, Luna thought to herself. Name's Uzumaki Naruto, but just Naruto's fine. he said, introducing himself to the Hellhound. Okay, so what do you want then, Naruto? Blitzo asked, feeling that maybe this once, talking was the better way out. It's Naruto, the blonde corrected. And I wanted to know why exactly you guys tried to kill me. We were hired to, by some monk dude, Blitzo replied, wanting to get this encounter over with. Naruto sighed and facepalmed at the mention of a monk trying to get him killed. Quote, you did, and he wanted us to kill you in return, Luna explained, handing him the file they had made for his case, but he turned it down, not really needing to know more about what they wanted from him. Look, just call the job off and I can pay you guys in some way, Naruto said, knowing that they were just doing their jobs and didn't have anything against him. I don't know, he offered us a lot of money for your head, Blitzo replied, stressing that the amount of money that they would be paid would be way more than they normally would make. Granted, if it meant dying at the hands of this monster, it wasn't worth it. Then how about a deal? If you're ever in trouble, trust me when I say I can hold my own. Back when I was human I beat a guy who cut the moon in half. He offered, giving an example of how powerful he truly was. I'll even throw in a free katana. Naruto added on, summoning a blade to his hand and placing it against the table. Deal. Blitzo agreed, rushing to the sword and drawing it like a kid on Christmas. Moxie couldn't help the facepalm as his boss gave up on their job just for a sword and the promise of help in the future. But he didn't want to risk his or Millie's life trying to finish the job. Their bullets proved useless against him and he doubted that would change anytime soon. So this is hell, huh? Naruto said, looking out the window at the red-tinted sky of the underworld. He could see something in the sky that he assumed was heaven based on the angelic appearance. There was something he needed to check out before he returned to Earth. Yeah, better than that musky game of yours, huh? Blitzo asked, accidentally cutting his desk in half with the extraordinarily sharp blade. Rolling his blue eyes, Naruto chuckled. Yeah, guess you can say that, he said before looking back at the four. So if someone died, would they end up here? Yeah, if they were a piece of shit in life, Blitzo answered crudely. Like if they killed people? The blonde asked. It's hell, you can guarantee that anyone who killed anyone is down here, Moxie replied, knowing that a lot of sinners were sent to hell because they murdered someone in life. Most of them live in Pentagram City, he pointed out. Naruto looked out towards the city in the distance. He could feel hundreds of thousands of souls there. He could feel a cesspool of sadness, pain, and corruption. He wondered if maybe. Anyways, let's get you back to Earth, but Blitzo couldn't finish in time. Naruto jumped through the window, shattering it as he dropped down to the street below. Blitzo cursed at the fact that Naruto had broken his window. By the time he spotted him, Naruto had already been rushing to Pentagram City. You're lucky this sword is badass. Blitzo yelled at him from the broken window, waving around his new toy. He felt a bit bad leaving the group without saying much, but he needed to figure out if his friends and family were still alive there. They were shinobi in life, and that kind of life made people do all sorts of horrible things. Almost every shinobi had killed at least one person in their life. His own father had killed thousands. When he died, he thought he'd go to the pure world and reunite with everyone he loved. Yet he had been unable to leave purgatory. Eventually, he found a way out, but it hadn't been how he expected. He was reborn as a nine-tailed fox resembling Kurama. A very powerful one at that. But time moved differently in purgatory, and when he left an eternity had passed and the world he once called home was gone. Chakra as he knew it was not the stuff of legends and niche spiritual practice. Shinobi and ninjutsu were now trained civilians using smoke and mirrors. And everyone he knew and loved had long since died and moved on. In the thousands of years since he returned, he tried his best to help people. To some, he was a demon that brought catastrophe, and to others, he was a god who brought good fortune and wealth to those who deserved it. Yet he was always alone. It was hard to bond with people who saw him as something more than human. He tried hiding the nature of his existence, but then it made any connections he made feel fake given how many secrets he had to hold back. Arriving in Pentagram City, he saw demons of all shapes and sizes walking around. Some were very humanoid like him while others were completely transformed into monsters. He saw signs, drugs, bars, anything and everything sinful under the sun seemed like it was but a few steps away here. He quickly noticed that they all seemed to be preparing for something, boarding up windows and hurrying to their homes. His senses expanded outwards to try and sense anyone who felt familiar. Anyone would do, hell he'd even take Orochimaru or Madara over no one at all. Hey, watch where you're going, bozo. Someone yelled as he rushed past him to put boards over his door. What's going on? Why is everyone boarding up their houses? Naruto asked the demon, who looked back at him like he was stupid. Now stop wasting my time, the man said before going back to fortifying his house. Extermination Day. Naruto repeated as he continued to walk through the streets of the sinner-filled city. He seemed to be the only being not in a panic. He spotted a massive clock on a tower, slowly ticking away. Passing by an electronics store, he saw a demon with a TV for a face. Come on, attention all citizens, that extermination day is starting in 10 minutes. I encourage all of you to spend the day watching all of our lovely programming. The demon said before it switched over to some comedy about cannibals. Hey, why don't you come to spend extermination day with us? A set of female demons came up to him, pressing their assets against him. His cheeks flushed as they were barely wearing anything at all, but he had a mission. Sorry, but I have to go, he said, puffing out of existence. A massacre. That was what he witnessed as he watched over the city. His golden tail swayed slowly behind him as if reacting to the sadness he felt in his heart. Is that why I couldn't sense you, Hinata? He muttered as he fought back the tears aching to flow from his fox-like blue eyes. He hadn't seen his wife from his time as a human in so long. He had been looking forward to maybe seeing her again, and yet those hopes were quickly fading. Dread filled the blonde as his senses picked up the negative emotions that filled the city and became ever stronger. So many lives being snuffed out so quickly. The loss of loved ones and the desperate struggle to survive. Betrayals left and right. Agony. This place was in pure agony. It made him think of how people felt back during his time ages ago. But it was a different time back then, and humans had changed so much since then. But they also changed so little. His thoughts were broken by the angels sounding a retreat and returning back to heaven through a portal on the air. Part of him wanted to go through it after them, but looking around he felt he needed to know what was going on down here. Why were angels here slaughtering sinners? Jumping down to the blood-covered streets, he couldn't help but feel bad as he passed body after body. Just as people began to poke their heads out from their hiding spots. No one paid him any mind as he explored the ravaged city. However, one thing stood out to him, the angelic building near the center of the city. It was like a slice of heaven had been dropped down in the middle of hell. What confused him was that if heaven had a presence here, they must have known about the exterminations. From what he knew, heaven should have been the keepers of all things good. So why were they sending angels down here? Why were they killing people without even giving them a chance to speak? It was then that he spotted a trail of golden blood leading into an alley. Following it led him to the sight of a tall blonde woman with pale skin and red circles on her cheeks. She wore a red suit top over a white button-up shirt with black dress pants. The injured woman had short ashen hair and gray skin with a pinkish-colored eye. Her clothing looked worn and dirty, consisting of a white tank top with 2 X's on it and a white skirt over black shorts. Get back! The injured woman yelled as she picked up her weapon and got in front of the blonde woman. Raising his hands up, he tried to seem as harmless as possible. I'm not here to fight, I just don't know what's going on and feel you could use some help, he said, waiting for her to put her weapon down before approaching further. Name's Uzumaki Naruto, he said, introducing himself to them. Vaggie, the woman with gray skin said with a hint of hesitation. Hey, I'm Charlie, the blonde girl said a bit awkwardly as she poked her head over the one-eyed woman's shoulder. Naruto smiled as he approached the two. Here, let me try and heal you, he said gently as he reached up toward Vaggie's eye, his hand coated in a golden-orange flame. The girl recoiled a bit at the sight of his glowing hand, but his serene smile and the severe pain she was in did its job in getting her to relax a bit at the suggestion that he could ease it. As soon as the orange glow made contact with where her eye used to be, she felt a flood of calm filling her as the pain of getting an eyeball gouged out left her. A second later the feeling was gone, but the pain didn't return. Thanks, she muttered softly, gratefully for the relief. Sorry, I wish I could remake your eye, he apologized. He figured that whatever took out her eye must have had special properties that made it harder to recover from. But I was able to stop the bleeding at least and heal it so it won't hurt as much, Naruto told her kindly. I should get going, I have to find a place to rest that isn't a dumpster. Vaggie said, looking a bit dejected at the current state of her life. It felt like just a few hours ago she was on top of the world. One of the top performers among her peers, and now here she was, discarded and alone. Charlie looked between the two before smiling. Well, if you two need a place to stay, I have a hotel. I would love to have some guests, she told them excitedly. Vaggie looked to the ground, knowing that she had no place to go now that her commanders had betrayed her. She couldn't go home, and she knew nothing of hell aside from that it was filled with demons and sinners, people she didn't particularly trust. However, looking at the golden-haired angel, she knew that there was something that separated him from regular winners. However, when he healed her, she couldn't help but feel the pureness of his energy, like she was bathing in the light of the sun. I would like that, she told Charlie with a nervous smile. I don't know about staying there, but I could use a nap. And if you could tell me more about hell, I'd appreciate it, Naruto said, knowing that he needed to find out more about what was going on here. He needed to know about what had happened to his loved ones. Great, Charlie shouted excitedly that she finally got people to stay at her hotel. It was still a work in progress, but she was sure that with some elbow grease, it would all come together. Happy Hotel. Leading the two in, Charlie made a grand motion to the rundown lobby of the building. Welcome to the Happy Hotel, she announced to the two as a cockroach fell on Naruto's head. Wow, looks homely, Naruto said, flicking the bug off his head. I know it's not much to look at, but soon this place will be where sinners from all over Pentagram City come to be redeemed, she told them with a wide smile on her face. Redeemed? The two newcomers to hell asked, not sure what she meant by that. Vaggie had never heard of a sinner being redeemed into a winner after being sent to hell. Naruto just assumed they stayed down there forever, while Vaggie knew that the exorcists would eventually kill them off. Yes, she shouted as she bounced over to them and dragged them over to a whiteboard with several crudely drawn pictures. So I was thinking that what if instead of heaven coming down here and killing sinners to control the population, we instead tried to make them better people so they can get into heaven. Charlie explained to the two. Wait, go back, I've been confused since I got here. Heaven comes down here and kills sinners? Naruto asked, confused as to what was going on. He'd never heard of this cycle back in heaven. Vaggie froze a bit and Charlie looked back at him wide-eyed. Wait, you didn't know about the exterminations? She asked. Maybe he was a recently deceased and he had no idea what was going on. I'm new around here, the answer seemed to be enough to satisfy them for the moment. After all, a new demon wouldn't know about what was going on, especially if they arrived in the middle of it all. But what happens to the people who are killed by those angels? Charlie looked away. They're gone, for good, she answered him honestly. The shocked look on Naruto's face told an entire story as his hopes of seeing the people he knew in life shattered completely. I see, he muttered as he processed everything, sitting down on one of the ruined couches. Your plan will help stop this extermination? The blonde asked Charlie, who nodded vigorously. Yes, Lucifer's daughter exclaimed, happy that he was asking more about her plan to rehabilitate sinners. You see, if there is no overpopulation problem, then there'll be no need for exterminations, she added, holding up a picture of a bunch of people happy in heaven and hell. I'll join, Vaggie said, touching the cloth that covered the spot where her eye once was. She had been betrayed by her leaders because she showed mercy to a sinner demon. But he was just a kid, someone who never got a fair shot at life as far as she knew. Plus it would stick it to Adam and loot. Charlie gave her a gigawatt smile, ecstatic that someone was willing to join her. Same, he said, standing up with a resolute look on his face as he decided that even if he couldn't save his people who had been cast down to hell, he could save those who still had a chance at getting into heaven. If there is even a chance that someone could be spared and make it to heaven, then they should have it, Naruto stated as he knew this wasn't right. Everyone deserves a chance at forgiveness. Yay! Charlie exclaimed, bringing the two in a tight bear hug. Naruto let out a sad smile as he accepted Charlie's embrace. He knew that he probably could never bring back those he lost, but at the very least he could prevent future souls from being destroyed in the same way. So what now? Now we start getting this place in shape, she announced as the hotel looked to be on the blink of collapse, and it would take a decent amount of work to get it in working shape. A wall broke down behind her, causing the upper level to collapse as well. Not again. Again, the two questioned at the same time. Charlie laughed nervously at the question. The hotel may need a bit of work here and there, she said, trying to gloss over how bad the state of the building was when in reality it was borderline falling apart. But that can wait until tomorrow. How about we get some food? Naruto perked up at the suggestion. He hadn't had a proper meal in ages, having taken a nap for the last decade to try and pass the time after the world had moved away from the supernatural and more towards science. His temple had fallen into disarray because no one came to visit and the family that took care of it had passed away during the Second World War. Is there ramen in hell? He asked, wondering if his favorite food existed in the dark half of the afterlife. I'm sure we could find a place. Charlie replied, hoping to make her new friend happy. Judging from the massive smile on his face, she could tell that ramen was high on his list of preferred foods. Even in hell, the food of the gods still reigns supreme, he declared with a strange amount of passion. A bird demon slammed his head against a table as Blitzo explained to him what had happened during his mission and the strange fox person that had broken into hell by following after them. A golden fox with 9 tails. In his wisdom, he knew of one creature who fit that description, and that was a Tenko. Blitzo, I cannot believe you tried to kill a Tenko of all things. Why didn't you do more research on what you were sent to kill? Stolas yelled. He knew that if it got out that someone or something from outside of hell had gotten in and was running around unsupervised, it could get him in hot water. A what? Blitzo asked. A very, very powerful spirit that doesn't belong to heaven or hell. They are unpredictable, strong, and smart. And you just let one into hell, Stolas explained, stressing how dangerous this creature could be. He doubted that Blitzo had any concept of what a Tenko was, let alone a kitsune or yokai, but from what the Godia knew, they were akin to gods. Pacing around, Stolas looked at Blitzo. You need to find him, before someone important notices him, Stolas ordered. Blitzo sweated at how firm the high-ranking demon was being on the issue. And if he refuses? The imp knew that he couldn't do anything to the supernatural fox. His whole team had been putty in his claws when they confronted him the first time. Stolas pinched his beak. Then you call me and I'll deal with him, Stolas answered. And then I hope I can convince him to not do anything stupid. Ramen, it's been too long. Naruto cried out, much to the embarrassment of the 2 ladies sitting across from him. How many years had it been since he had a good bowl of ramen? He had resigned himself to stay away from humanity for so long. It hurt him to see people around him but not being able to talk to them as equals. So, how did you die, Naruto? If you don't mind me asking. Charlie asked, hoping she wasn't being insensitive. Naruto hummed, noodles hanging from his mouth, much to the amusement of the blonde princess. Oh, I don't really remember. Really? It's only been a few hours. Veggie asked, wondering if maybe sinners didn't remember how they passed away. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized the confusion. Oh. You think I died recently? He concluded before laughing. I died over, I'm gonna say, at least 10,000 years ago. Purgatory made it hard to tell time. 10,000 years ago. The 2 shouted at the same time. Then how are you just getting to hell now? Charlie asked, knowing that it shouldn't have taken that long for Naruto to manifest in hell. Maybe, he fell from heaven like her father. Oh, I followed some demons from Earth, stupid idiots tried to kill me. He complained about the 3 imps that had disturbed his sleep because they were hired. I showed them what happens when you mess with the wrong kitsune, the whiskered blonde gloated, remembering the thrashing he gave those demons. Wait, you came from Earth? Veggie asked, confused. Yep, so what are you? Charlie asked. Seeing that they were confused as to what he was, he figured he'd explain to them what his deal was. Okay, so I died a very long time ago. But instead of being sent to heaven or hell, I was reincarnated as what the Japanese call a kyubi no kitsune. A bit ironic since people accused me of being one my whole childhood when I was human, he commented, knowing that it was kind of funny that people from his village thought of him as the demon fox, only for him to turn into one post-death. That's so cool, Charlie exclaimed, mystified at the prospect of supernatural creatures native to Earth that she had never seen before. She thought Earth was just filled with humans, she didn't think that there were special demons that weren't native to hell. I thought that maybe in hell I could find my loved ones. But guess they must have been exterminated a long time ago. Naruto lamented, knowing that it was useless to hold on to the hope that he might still find his family here. The two looked saddened by his words. So why stay? Veggie asked. I believe people deserve a second chance. My loved ones may not have gotten one, but I know they would have wanted me to help others get one if possible, he told them honestly. He almost seemed to glow with kindness in a way that no one in hell could hope to match, except maybe the woman across from him. _SOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOO fox yokai instead of an angel or regular demon. I feel like it really opens up the possibility of him being his own character without having to fit in with either an angel or demon from hell. As for pairings, well, I'll prob just go with the flow of the story instead of having to check off a list of gals. Makes it more organic and shit. Please leave a review, it tells me your thoughts and it takes only 10 seconds to say that you loved it or if this is cancer and I should die XD. PM me any suggestions and ideas. Or if you just wanna chat. I try my best to respond. The light of the morning pierced through his window and right over his face, stirring the blonde kitsune spirit from his slumber. Slitted blue eyes opened, annoyed by the light that woke him up. The bed he had been given was comfortable, or at least compared to what he had gotten used to in his old abandoned temple in Japan. How long had it been since he slept in his human form? It was too early to think on such things. Orange energy swirled around him, forming a black suit with an orange undershirt. His 9 tails swished behind him, stirring up a cloud of dust. This place needs to be deep cleaned, he sighed knowing that his room likely hadn't been clean in years due to the hotel being abandoned with the exception of Charlie and now him and Vaggie. A clone of him appeared with a quick sign from his hand. Clean the room, he said before walking out, leaving a deadpanning clone behind. The floors creaked with each step he took down the stairs toward the lobby. Vaggie had already been there when he arrived, glaring into a cup of coffee. I don't think that's how you heat up coffee, he joked walking over to her with a soft smile. He saw her dark expression turn a bit awkward at being caught in the midst of her thoughts. Something on your mind? Naruto asked, sitting on the other side of the sofa and summoning a cup of sake. Just thinking about how I got here, she replied with a strained smile. He could tell that she was forcing herself to stay positive. Yet she wasn't lying. I guess people never expect to end up in hell, the blonde commented, figuring that she was likely upset that she had been sent to hell in the first place. You can say that again, Vaggie muttered, taking a sip of her coffee. She wasn't like Charlie who had been born here or Naruto who was here by his own choice, she had been forced to be here. She had no choice in this. Adam had damned her to hell. Adam, that bastard. The cup shattered in her hands. Naruto's eyes widened slightly at the sudden surge of anger. Are you okay? He asked, worried that she might have burned or cut herself in the act. Vaggie's lone eye widened at what she had done. I'm fine. Sorry, just a lot on my mind, she said, standing up and looking at her coffee-covered clothing. It was her only outfit. What was that? Charlie asked, walking in wearing loose pajamas, her hair out of her ponytail and disheveled. She saw the shattered mug on the ground and Vaggie covered in coffee. I got a bit too in my head, haha, Vaggie admitted. Here, Naruto said, his energy swirling in his hand, forming a kimono. Go change into this, he offered, knowing that she didn't have anything else to wear. Vaggie took the outfit from Naruto's hand, quickly noticing just how soft the fabric was despite it being made from his energy. Thank you, Vaggie said before going to change in the restroom. I feel bad for her, he said to Charlie, his face falling as he thought more about the silver-haired woman. But guess that's why we gotta find a way to redeem people, he said, raising a saucer of sake before downing it in one gulp. Charlie nodded her head in agreement. It's people like her that I believe deserve a second chance, she affirmed. In her eyes, Vaggie was someone who, as far as she knew, was a good person. Sure, she must have done something to end up in hell, but that didn't mean she didn't deserve the opportunity. Would we be able to go shopping today? Vaggie asked the two blondes. She didn't really want to ask Naruto to make her clothing every day, and she doubted that she'd fit into any clothing Charlie would have in her closet. Of course, it could be our first outing, Charlie exclaimed, excited to get to work in redeeming Vaggie. We'll get you to heaven in no time. Vaggie froze when she heard that Charlie intended to send her to heaven. She knew that it wouldn't happen, but she needed a place to stay. Right. Plus this would be a good time for me to get to know hell, or at least this part of hell, Naruto added on. If he was going to help people here, he needed to know what he was working with. I'll go call the limo. The 3 residents of the Happy Hotel rode in the limo Charlie had called for them. Naruto watched as creatures of all shapes and sizes lived out their lives in hell. It almost reminded him of Earth, even if a bit more chaotic. He saw sinners doing drugs in broad daylight, the occasional murder or mugging, or at least attempted murder since sinners couldn't die without the use of angelic weapons. I know some people can be a bit rough around the edges, but I promise you that there's good in them. Charlie exclaimed, seeing the frown on Naruto's face as he looked out the window. Naruto smiled back at Charlie. Don't worry, when I was human I met quite a few people who people thought were unredeemable but changed their ways later on, he reassured. My best friend tried to kill me more than a few times before I got through to him. Vaggie raised an eyebrow at that. Your best friend tried to kill you? Yep. Bastard shoved a lightning-covered fist through my chest. He said, laughing. He had long since forgiven Sasuke for that spat. It wasn't their last fight, but it certainly set the tone for their future ones. Humans can use magic? Charlie questioned, not knowing that humans could do stuff like that. Naruto hummed a bit as he thought of an answer. A long time ago they could. Most people now can't, he replied, figuring that there were still some people out there able to do supernatural things, especially if they invoked demons to help them. The world was different back then, Naruto added on, recalling how the world had changed ever since he died. The 2 women silently wondered just what kind of life Naruto had lived before he died, especially if it resulted in him becoming a fox spirit instead of being sent to heaven or hell. What about you, Vaggie? Naruto asked the one-eyed warrior. She figured that if she ended up here in hell, she must have had some sort of story. I really don't wanna talk about it, she replied, knowing that she would either have to lie to them about her backstory or tell them the truth and risk them reacting badly. Fair enough, the blonde shrugged, not wanting to dig deeper than Vaggie felt comfortable sharing with them. He said before spotting the imps that had opened the portal that eventually led to him coming down to hell in the first place. They looked like they were looking for someone, showing people a crudely drawn picture of him. Hey, maybe you two should go on without me, Naruto suggested. Why? Charlie asked, wanting her fellow blonde to stick around with them. Well, what if Vaggie needs underwear? He asked, getting a blush from the one-eyed woman. See, she might not be comfortable with me around, Naruto pointed out. I agree, Vaggie muttered. Naruto patted Charlie on the head. I'll meet you both in the hotel later, he said before producing a paper tag. Slap this on any surface if you need me to come quick, the fox spirit told them as Vaggie took the paper. See ya later. To their shock, Naruto vanished in a swirl of wind and leaves. Blitzo asked, irate that they had been looking for hours and found next to nothing about the blonde fox. How hard was it to find a golden fox spirit with 9 tails in hell? He was pretty sure there was only one down here. Behind you, Naruto said as he walked up to the 3 who aimed their guns at him. Come on, really? He questioned, a tail knocking the guns away before they could even think of pulling the trigger. I came here to talk, not fight. But I'd gladly go for a round 2 if we need to first, he offered, not being against beating the 3 if it meant they'd listen to him. No, I think we're good, Blitzo said, not wanting to get into a fight against Naruto if it could be avoided. So why are you 3 looking for me? He asked, getting straight to the point. Well, you see, sir, we were told to bring you back to Earth, the shorter of the 2 male imps said meekly, hoping that the fox spirit wouldn't turn his wrath on them. Naruto sighed but shook his head. Sorry, but I can't go back to Earth right now. I found something I need to do down here, he told them. He had promised to help Charlie try and help the people of Hell get to heaven if they worked to become better people. Yeah, that's not gonna fly, bucko. Stolas was very clear that you had to go back home, Blitzo reported. He didn't want to have to call Stolas to help them with their situation, but he knew that there wasn't really any way he could force the blonde to come back to Earth with them. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I told you, I'm staying. If this Stolas person wants to make an issue of it, he can come here himself, he replied firmly. Please don't act too harshly towards my associates, an eloquent voice said as a bird demon appeared behind the 3 imps. He looked like an owl in regal clothing with a crown top hat with two red eyes on them. They were merely following my direction, he said as the three moved aside for him. Stolas, I presume? Naruto asked, figuring that this was the demon who had sent IMP after him to get him back to Earth. You would be correct, Stolas said, giving a small bow. I am Stolas, Prince of the Ars Godia, he introduced himself. Naruto, the blonde Tenko replied, offering a hand to the demon. While he wasn't exactly happy that they wanted to send him back to hell, it didn't mean he had to be rude to them. A pleasure, but I'm afraid I must insist that you return to Earth. Please understand that a being of your magnitude can severely affect hell. As a prince of hell, I cannot allow you to stay here and risk the security of the whole realm. Stolas tried to explain to the fox spirit, who frowned that he was being judged for what he could do rather than what he was intending to do. Look, I get it. But I promised Charlie that I would help her. And I can't help here if I'm sleeping in some cave on Earth, Naruto reported, having found something to do that felt important to him for the first time in ages. Charlie, Stolas said, the dread of knowing who Naruto had gotten into contact with already starting to crawl up his feathered back. You don't mean Charlie Morningstar, do you? He asked for clarification. Yeah, Princess of Hell, daughter of Lucifer, wears a cute red suit, that Charlie. The Godia had been hoping to reach Naruto before he ran into someone who could pretty much stonewall his efforts to get him back to Earth. While it wasn't as bad as Naruto falling in league with Lucifer himself, this was close to the worst-case scenario for them. Naruto, Charlie shouted, running back to him. You have my credit card, she said, remembering that Naruto had held on to her card after she almost let some sinner borrow it to buy some drugs. Oh, Prince Stolas, what are you doing here? Charlie asked, seeing the owl demon talking to her new associate. He wanted me to go back to Earth, Naruto answered plainly. Oh, Charlie said, looking disappointed. Are you going to go back? She asked him, her face downcast. Do you want me to? He asked back. No. Naruto smiled and looked back at Stolas. There you have it. Letting out a sigh, Stolas decided to give it a rest. If he was in league with the Morning Stars, then it was already outside his authority. He just hoped that his family would be okay in case things went sideways. As far as he knew, the only beings who could realistically bring the blonde under control were the royal family, or possibly one or more of the Sins. Very well, though given my involvement, he said, glaring down at Blitzo, I would appreciate it if you came to check in with me around once a month, Stolas asked, figuring that he should at the very least keep an eye on Naruto just in case someone came asking questions. He needed to at the very least look like he was taking responsibility for his actions. Oh, taking a liking to the blonde? Blitzo asked, nudging Stolas on the side. Heavens no, Stolas replied back, panic briefly on his face as he hoped that the imp of his desires didn't really think that he was trying to get someone else in bed with him. I'm not into dudes anyways, Naruto pointed out. He might have been kissed by a few in his younger years, but those had all been completely an accident. It was then that Blitzo's phone began to scream, alerting him that he was getting a call. He loony, he said, seeing that it was his adoptive daughter who had been on the other side. What a job. Millie, Moxie, we're leaving, Blitzo yelled at the other two before rushing to the van to speed his way back to their headquarters. Blitzy, we're not done yet. Stolas called out, having need of his grimoire soon. Well, be back soon. Just gotta shoot a bitch. That was all Blitzo said as the two other imps excused themselves and rushed after their boss. Naruto looked at Stolas. So they just kill people? He asked the demon, not sure how he felt about letting them run off on their own. I mean, yes, but they typically deserve it, I think, Stolas said, hoping that his favorite imp would be okay. Naruto hummed and made a clone of himself, sending it to go after the three. I'll keep an eye on them, I do owe them a favor for getting me down here, he said, smiling at Charlie. His life had been lacking meaning for a while now, and being able to find something meaningful to do was worth coming to hell. It had only been a few hours before his clone popped, alerting Naruto of what had been going on back on Earth with the imps. It seemed that the people they had gone after were cannibals. Or at the very least some family of cultists that had captured. Charlie and Veggie were out trying to recruit some sinners to come work on themselves while he tidied up the hotel with his clones. Guess it's time to cash in that favor, Naruto said to himself as he teleported to where he had sensed his clone pop itself on Earth. In a flash of golden light, he was in front of a house with a giant hole blown through one of its walls. He could feel the negativity seeped into this place. It reeked of bloodlust and malice, almost as much as some of the demons down in hell. As he walked through the hole, he noticed that a lot of the decor had been made from human remains. Skins stretched and leathered, the cushions on the chairs had faces on them, likely prior victims of whoever lived here. He sensed one of the imps in the house while the other two seemed to be off in the forest. I should burn this place to the ground after I save those guys, Naruto said to himself. Places like these were doomed to become dens for all sorts of malefic spirits if left alone. Kicking the door to the room where he sensed Moxie, he couldn't help but feel sickened at the sight. The remains of humans displayed the trophies all over the room. The carcass of one of them left on the table, decorated as if it were a pig ready to be eaten. Naruto! Moxie cried out in confusion as he hadn't expected the Tenko to appear here. Another toy, the boy said with a twisted grin on his face as he thought about how he and his sister would have another critter to play with. Scowling, he was repulsed by how cruel and evil these two children were. The corruption from their parents had already twisted them into monsters in human flesh. There was no doubt in his mind that the two had likely killed dozens of times and eaten just as many people. He could feel just how much they wanted to slice his hope and mount his tails as trophies. I'll give you one shot, surrender, Naruto said, cracking his knuckles, nails extending. The boy pulled out a pistol and aimed at the blonde spirit, but he was already gone from his sight. It was then that he felt something pierce his back and out his chest. Looking down, he said, a hand holding his heart. Naruto pulled out the kid's heart and tossed it to the side before turning to the red-haired daughter who was holding Moxie at knife point. You killed him. She cried out as she saw her brother collapse on the floor, blood leaking out. Moxie himself was a bit horrified by how easily Naruto had killed the child. He'll find a chance of redemption in hell, assuming he tries, Naruto replied, knowing that the Happy Hotel could help the kid if he was willing to move past his evil ways. Now, why don't you let him go? She said, ready to stab Moxie in the throat, but instead found a kunai drilled into her head. Sorry, guess you were too far gone, he said before the girl fell back. Walking up to Moxie, he cut the ropes. You okay? Moxie nodded his head, looking around at the two dead humans. You killed them, Moxie said, his notions of a happy family shattered as he reconciled with that the family he had stopped Blitzo from breaking apart had almost killed him. Come on, we need to get to the others, Naruto said, tossing a shotgun into Moxie's hands. Moxie nodded before Naruto lifted him up and broke through the window at an extreme speed. Ah! Moxie yelled as he wasn't used to moving as fast the speed that Naruto was moving. Naruto spotted a curvaceous woman aiming her gun at Blitzo and Millie, who had been tied to a burning fire. Oi! He yelled, getting her attention. As she turned around, he leapt up and kicked her face into the ground. Moxie! Millie cried out as she saw her husband in Naruto's hands. The male imp jumped down and started to untie them. What are you doing here? You trying to steal our job? Blitzo accused. Another sacrifice to our Dark Lord, Martha said, getting up, blood dripping down her face as she recovered from the kick. God, her tits are huge, Naruto muttered before Moxie shot the woman in the face from behind him. That was for threatening my wife, Moxie said, feeling that he needed to make up for his mistake at the start of the mission. Nice shot, Mox. You're still not getting paid, and neither are you, Blondie, Blitzo said, looking at the spirit, who rolled his eyes before he noticed the husband attempting to sneak away while they celebrated the death of Martha. Where are you going? Naruto asked as he appeared in front of the man and lifted him up into the air by his neck. Looking into the man's eyes, he scowled as he witnessed Ralphie's life of evil and cult-like dedication to human sacrifice in service of his Dark Lord. With the twitch of his wrist, Naruto killed him and dropped the body. Looking back, he saw that Blitzo had called in the portal for them to return to hell and followed after them back to the imp office where a cake was ready for them. Moxie, you did it. Millie celebrated as she was happy that her husband had finally stepped up and shot someone when he would have hesitated in the past. And that killing people isn't bad if they try to kill you back. Millie added on as she cut a piece of cake for herself and Moxie. And damn, Naruto, I didn't expect you to just snap that dude's neck like that. Honestly, it was badass, Blitzo said to the blonde, who rolled his eyes. He was evil, he needed to die, the blonde replied before looking at. Sure, her soul was tainted given that she murdered her husband, but at the same time it was nowhere near as bad as some of the other people here in hell. If you ever wanna give redemption a chance, miss, try visiting the Happy Hotel, he told her, wanting to possibly recruit someone. I'll give it some thought, she replied with a grateful smile on her face. As the party continued, Naruto approached Luna, who had gone off on her own to drink a beer on her own away from the others. Hey there, he said, joining her, 2 beers in hand as he handed one to her. What do you want? Luna asked, not sure how to act with the fox spirit. She couldn't help but find him handsome. He just seemed to have this aura of power to him that made her hair stand on edge. Nothing really, just figured you could use some company, he said as he leaned against the wall next to her. Luna looked Naruto up and down before sighing. What you want, she muttered. Naruto smirked as he moved closer to her face. You sure you want that? Naruto asked, her face going crimson red at how close he was to her face. Naruto held his gaze before bursting into giggles. Sorry. Naruto apologized as he backed away, not able to keep up the act. Luna growled, punching him in the shoulder. I said I'm sorry. Naruto laughed. He couldn't help but find her cute. But I was thinking of maybe dropping by here and there, plus I'm new to hell and figured it would be good to make some new friends, he told her honestly. The 4 here seemed to be decent people if a bit deranged. Whatever, Luna muttered before drinking the beer she had been handed. Why do I have to do this? Luna asked as she and Naruto were out in Pentagram City handing out flyers for their respective business. Naruto was to invite sinners to the Happy Hotel so they could work towards being redeemed, while Luna was handing out flyers promoting Blizto's business. At least people are taking yours, Naruto sighed. He had absolutely zero luck getting anyone to so much as look at the flyers he had been handing out once he explained what they were for. It turned out that most if not all of the demons down here had already accepted their situation and didn't want to waste time trying to be better when they could be having fun. He couldn't really blame them. There was no actual proof that Charlie's plan would work. No one had ever been redeemed before. They didn't have the luxury of being native-born demons either. Sinners knew that unless they reached higher levels of power and influence, they were destined to die at the hands of an exorcist blade at some point. So why bother? Luna looked away as her tail nearly touched one of his 9. At least he's bearable to be around, she thought to herself. If she had to do this with Moxie, she might have blown her head off. Wanna trade? Maybe having a cute hellhound handing them out is the secret, Naruto asked, offering to swap roles. Cute, she shouted back, her cheeks glowing red through her fur. Naruto took a step back. Sorry. I didn't mean to insult you, I just mean that maybe people would be more open to hear from you than me, he tried to explain to the hellhound. I don't know about that, Luna replied as she couldn't help but notice the gazes that the blonde was getting from both male and female demons alike. She came off as pretty unapproachable, and that was the way she liked it. It saved her time from having to deal with idiots. So what are the other 3 up to? He asked since they weren't back at the office when he came to visit. It had just been Luna on her phone with a stack of papers that Blitzo had left for her to hand out and post around the city. Originally she planned to just throw the flyers away in the shredder and call it a day, but when the blonde showed up and asked if she wanted to join him, she gave in. They're protecting some old dude or something at some crappy amusement park, the hellhound told him, not caring about what the 3 were doing. They were making money and that was what mattered in the end. Plus it gave her a quiet day away from them and with her new blonde friend. Oh, you mean that Stolas guy? He asked but got kicked in the shin. Shish, it's a secret, she growled, not wanting it to get around that Stolas had been working with IMP. She knew damn well that many of their activities were considered illegal and the last thing she needed was the divine fox spreading the word. Naruto wasn't really bothered by the kick but acknowledged that it was a sensitive issue. Stolas probably wouldn't have revealed their connection to him had they not been directly responsible for him being here. Sure, Charlie knew too, but she wasn't that involved in the more political side of hell and he didn't think she'd tell Lucifer. Charlie wasn't on the best terms with her father. My bad, Naruto said before deciding to give up for the day. It had been 2 hours of failing to get anyone to take him seriously. If anything, he got more offers for her to join them at a bar to do drugs than anything else. I'm done for the day, he told Luna, sealing away his remaining flyers for another day. Luna looked around before throwing the rest of her papers in the trash. Maybe someone would come digging through, or not, she didn't care at this point. Wanna go to a party I was invited to? She asked with a nervous smile. Charlie and Vaggie were busy today, so he figured it'd be okay for him to socialize a bit. Sure. I haven't gone out to a bar in, well, a long time really, he answered, figuring that the last time he went to have a proper drink had been in Japan when some Susanoo guy asked him to help get sake so he could fight some monstrous snake. He didn't want to get involved with that back then. Luna's ears perked up when he accepted his invitation. Really? Like, you for real? She asked to make sure he wasn't just messing with her. She had been planning on going alone, but if the hot blonde wanted to go with her she wouldn't mind. Sure, I haven't been to a party in centuries, Naruto said, excited at the prospect of getting to go to a party. Naruto and Luna stepped out of a taxi that had driven them from the Pride Ring to the Gluttony Ring. Luna had changed into a strapless black dress with a pentagram on it, while Naruto had used his power to alter his clothing into something more fitting, wearing a black t-shirt that hugged his body and dark blue jeans. Luna couldn't help but sneak in some glances at Naruto's physique. While he wasn't overly bulky, he was far from scrawny, as his body seemed trained to perfection. By the time they arrived, the party was already in full swing. Wow, this place is packed, Naruto said as the two entered the building. The whole building had been filled with hellhounds and imp of all types of looks. Luna rubbed her arm as she wasn't used to being around so many demons, let alone having someone come with her. Hey, is that Luna? It's me, Fid from the pound. A short pitbull-looking hellhound came with 2 bottles of beer in hand. Looking up at Naruto, the hellhound offered one of the 2 drinks to him. That your date? He asked Luna. Yes, no. I mean, Luna replied, unsure of what to say, so instead she grabbed the bottle and chugged down its content. Whoa, someone's trying to catch up quickly. Fid laughed, thinking that Luna just wanted to hurry up and join the party as soon as possible. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Luna's strange behavior but just chalked it up to her being nervous about being around so many others. Cheers, Naruto said to Fid before drinking some of his own. It was sweet and significantly stronger than what he had before at the mission success party. Hope y'all can handle your Beelzejuice, we got plenty on tap, he said before he was called over by another group of hounds. Hey Luna, Naruto said, getting the secretary's attention. Yes, she asked, standing upright. She desperately hoped that her 9-tailed companion wouldn't hear her call him her date before she corrected herself. Naruto smiled and rubbed the top of her head. I'm here for you, so relax a bit, okay? He said, trying to be supportive of her. Luna was a bit taken aback by his supportive nature but nodded his head. Good, now let's go get another drink. Luna, Luna, Luna. The whole crowd seemed to chant as the gray and white hellhound as she held a pitch of liquor to her mouth, chugging it. The last drop went down her throat. When she finished, the whole crowd cheered at her accomplishment. She didn't know how much time had passed since she and Naruto arrived. All she knew was that she was having the time of her life. Naruto had kept his promise and stayed by her side the whole time as she slowly opened up to others. Her face was flushed and her vision was blurry. She found it kinda hard to walk as she stumbled her way to Naruto, who was watching on, tripping into his arms. "Zoe," she slurred as he helped her get her balance back. "You okay?" he asked, concerned for her after having drank so much. Luna looked up, her white eyes meeting his worried blue ones. "Yeah, I am," she said, placing a hand on his chest to balance herself. "How about we hit the dance floor and get you another drink," she said, feeling that he could use more to drink. "Sure thing," the fox spirit said as they moved over to the dance floor, finding a spot where they had some room for themselves. A waiter carrying a tray of drinks walked by, Naruto grabbing one as they danced. As Naruto drank, Luna smirked and turned around. His eyes widened as he felt a tail wrapping around his waist and a toned rubbing against his groin. Luna had taken the initiative and started to grind on him, biting her lower lip as she felt him growing through his pants. Luna," he asked, only for her to reach back and wrap her arms around his neck, leaning against him so that there was no space between them. "Your scent drives me mad," she said, moving in circles on him. Hey, people are starting to stare," Naruto said, a bit shy at how some demons were starting to look at the two. Turning around, Luna pressed her chest against his. Smiling up at him, the smell of alcohol was fresh on both their breaths. Then give them a show, she whispered into his ear before claiming his lips in a surprise kiss. Naruto lost his strength as he found himself responding to her advances. His tails wrapped around her as they made out. Luna moaned into the kiss, tasting the booze in Naruto's mouth. Whoa, looks like Luna is making her move. One of the party goers said, pointing them out. Luna was too lost in her own days to be flustered or embarrassed by it. Get that bone, girl, a female hellhound yelled. Everyone make way. Get these two a room to get their freak on. Woohoo, another said as everyone parted and started to push the two into an empty room before closing the door. 7 minutes in hell, one declared to the cheer of the party. You are entering horny jail. The two stumbled onto the bed, Luna on top of him. Their tongues locked in a heated duel against one another as their bodies pressed against one another. Naruto turned them over then pulled back away from her. Gods, you're hot, Naruto muttered as he felt her grinding her hips against his member. She asked, reaching for a bottle next to the bed and chugging more liquor before handing the bottle to Naruto, who shrugged and drank the hellish liquid. Are you sure you want this? Naruto growled into her head only to feel a clawed hand cup his manhood over his pants, rubbing it until it got painful to keep it inside. She said pointedly. Her hand brought her dress up, exposing her moistened black lingerie. She moaned as Naruto traced a finger over her covered folds. She could feel his finger lightly pressing into her but not enough to penetrate her. Don't you dare tease me, she growled. Naruto moved her panties to the side, 2 fingers slipping into her. Luna's breath hitched when she felt something enter her. Her back arches as she felt his finger pumping in and out, her fluids starting to flow. A hand reached up and grabbed Naruto's head, fingers running through the golden locks before bringing him down for a kiss, muffling her moans. Pulling his hand out, Naruto broke the kiss off and took his pants off, tossing them to the side before pushing Luna's legs open. Luna held her legs back, leaving her lower entrance open for Naruto. Without a second thought, he plunged into her. Luna's eyes widened as she felt herself spread wide open. It took her a moment to get used to his size, but in seconds Naruto was already moving. She could feel every stroke of him, the thick head of his member digging deep into her body, striking at her core. She commanded from her, wanting the blonde to plow her more. As you command, he replied, using 2 of his tails to hold her legs back and pulling her back against the bed's headboard. With his hands now free, the Tenko pulled the top of her dress down, exposing her breasts to his sinful gaze. Ah, she cried out as his mouth cupped one of her buds. Her back arched as she felt waves of pleasure from her chest and her hips. Every grope brought her closer to her climax. Shit, Luna, I'm gonna come, Naruto warned, letting go of her nipple, his hips moving wildly against her. The party raging just outside the door, a distant memory as they indulge in each other's bodies. She wanted to feel his seed inside of her. Each thrust came faster than the next as Naruto raced towards his own. Locking lips, Naruto pushed himself all the into her. Luna screamed in pleasure as she felt his seed shooting into her, filling her sacred chamber. Her howl filled the room and probably let everyone at the party know that she had come. The faint sounds of cheering could be heard from the other side of the door. His member slipped out of her as he finished creaming in her. Luna laid back against the headboard, taking in deep breaths as she came down from the high of her own. You think we're done yet? A chuckle left Naruto's lips as moved towards her. Well, I didn't want to assume, he replied, mind clouded by alcohol and lust. So just shut up and put it back it already. She howled, Naruto sticking his entire member all the way into her once again. From this position, she could feel it reaching deeper into her than before. You talk a big game. Naruto laughed as he started to move, her lower lips looser now that he had warmed them with the last round. Her claws gripped the headboard, her nails digging into the wood as she thrust sent a shiver straight to her brain. Naruto reached up and pulled her hair back, her head snapping up as she held her back, other hand resting on her hip. Luna panted, tongue hanging out of her mouth. Her eyes glassed over, rolling back in pleasure. To Naruto, every noise she made was music to his ears. Every pant, every moan, every howl of pleasure made him was to plunge into her harder than before. It had been ages since he last laid with a woman, and Luna left little to be desired. Her snatch clamped around him, squeezing his manhood from every direction as if begging it to never leave it. The bed rocked with each sway of their hips. Grinning, Luna pushed off the headboard and put Naruto on his back. Looking back with desire in her eyes, she bounced on his manhood. The blonde groaned, watching Luna's rear ripple each time it came down on him. Her tail wrapped around his neck for support as his hands rested on her thigh. Luna moaned as she felt his fingers caressing her legs. So close, she told him, picking up her pace. Luna let out another howl as she came. She squirted over Naruto's lap, her chamber trapping the intruder in a stranglehold. Once again she felt a warmth enter her, filling her body with a sense of bliss as Naruto painted her insides white with his milk. That's the spot. You are now out of horny jail. Naruto and Luna stood at the back of the party as the hellhound lit a cigarette and placed it in her mouth. Neither had said a thing to one another after they had come down from their high and realized what had happened. Looking at the blonde, Luna offered the cig to him before she took a puff from it. I don't smoke, Naruto replied before sighing. I liked it, Luna admitted. Sure, it was a bit embarrassing that everyone heard them going at it, but end of the day it was hell and stuff like this happened all the time. What, you didn't? She asked a bit sharply. Naruto rolled his eyes. It was great, I just didn't expect to end up like this, he told her honestly. He expected to go to a party and just have some fun, but never that kind of fun with his friend. Same, but I'm not upset, she said, feeling like in the end everything was alright. Or at least she hoped. Naruto watched as she smoked the cig away. He was still processing what had happened. The last time he had been with a woman had been ages ago. Being immortal had its perks but also its drawbacks, especially when your brain was still human in a way. Same, it's been a lot of work lately. It was nice to cut loose for a bit, Naruto admitted, feeling like it was a release that he needed. He had been working overtime at the hotel between making sure that everything stayed somewhat stable and clean while at the same time searching for guests. Why not ask the princess? Luna asked, figuring that given how much time he and Charlie spent together, they might end up together. Naruto chuckled. Well, I just met her and I don't exactly like rushing things, he admitted. Like we did. Nudging her in the gut, Naruto gave her a side glare. We're drunk and got wrapped up in the moment, he replied. The drinks here were different from the ones on Earth. At this point most of the alcohol on Earth didn't have an effect on him, but the liquor from hell was different, made for demons that were also resistant to drugs and such. So we were just a moment? She asked, feeling a bit hurt. Depends, do you want it to just be a moment? He countered. Luna stayed silent for a bit. She thought about what he'd just asked her. Sure, their activities had been a rush of the moment thing, but in the end, she had invited him and she instigated it because she was attracted to him. I don't think so, she said, feeling a bit too vulnerable for her liking. She was used to being alone. No real friends. Her family was just that idiot Blitzo. Then it doesn't have to be, Naruto replied with a smile. Do you wanna see where things go? I think before she could finish, her eyes widened. Turning her head away from him, she hacked as a slurry of green liquid spewed out. Naruto rushed to her side to hold her hair back while she vomited the contents of her stomach. Guess someone drank too much, he joked. You already did. Blitzo tapped his foot as he waited for Luna to get home. It was already past 2 am and she still hadn't returned. Loony, where are you? He muttered as he tried calling her phone again to be sent to voicemail. Before he could try again he heard a knock at the door. Rushing over, he yanked it open and aimed his gun at the person on the other side. Naruto? He questioned before seeing a sleeping Luna in his arms. The smell of booze was thick on both of them. His eyes narrowed as he felt protective over his adopted daughter. You have 3 seconds to tell me what happened before I blow your brains out, he warned. Rolling his eyes, Naruto used one of his tails to grab and lower the gun. We were at a party and she drank a bit too much, he explained as he walked in. Looking at the room it was clearly hers, he brought her in and attempted to put her in but found that she was clinging to him a bit too tightly. Hey Luna, time to go to bed, he said, shaking her away. Stay here with me, Luna cooed. Sorry, but I gotta go, he said, getting her to let go and setting her down in bed, covering her with a blanket before leaving the room to find a rather perturbed Blitzo. The imp tapped his food as he wanted the blonde to leave his daughter's room. So, care to tell me what happened? He asked, knowing that he couldn't take on the blonde, but by Satan, he would try if he hurt his daughter in any way. We went to a party and got a bit too drunk, Naruto replied, not lying but not telling Blitzo the full truth. He didn't know how the imp would react if he told him that he and Luna hooked up at the party. Blitzo narrowed his eyes before sighing. Well, thanks for bringing her home safe, he said, grateful that Naruto had at the very least gotten her back here. The last thing he needed was Luna getting wasted and getting lost somewhere or stranded at the party. Well, I gotta get back to the hotel. See you later, Blitzo, Naruto said in return, feeling tired from a late night of partying. Hopefully, he didn't keep Charlie up too late, worrying about where he was. Oh wait, Blitzo said, running after him. We got a huge caseload coming in tomorrow for spring break, figured you could come with us. He asked, thinking that he could use the extra help getting some of his marks done. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the request. I'm not really into killing people, and what if you try and leave me stranded back on Earth? He accused, pointing a finger at Blitzo, who rolled his eyes. Please, as if your godlike doesn't already have a way back here, Blitzo retorted, knowing that someone as powerful as the nine-tailed fox before him would easily have a way to return to hell now that he already got here once. A wide smirk spread over Naruto's lips, damn, already catching on. I must be losing my touch. He laughed, knowing that even if Blitzo left him on Earth, he had left a mark back at the hotel that he could use to instantly return to hell. He also left one at the IMP base, but no one needed to know that yet. Ah, well, there are gonna be a lot of people there, and maybe a few demons too. I figured we could use some muscle just in case shit hits the fan, ya know, Blitzo clarified. He didn't really need help killing humans, but he knew that it was also prime season for other demons to come after humans. They were pretty good with weapons, but in the end, they were still imps. And running into the wrong demon could really screw them over. I'll see if I'm free, he said before vanishing. Blitzo turned to check on Luna, who was snuggling against her pillow. A warm smile on his face. Harder, Naruto, she moaned in her sleep, causing the imp's smile to drop. Naruto slumped into the hotel lobby with a groan. His hand to his head, he couldn't help the headache that stabbed his brain. It had been ages since he had drunk that much, and the demonic liquor was nothing like what one could get from Earth. The stuff really packed a punch. Despite that, he couldn't deny that the previous night was one of the best in a long time. He dragged his feet like they weighed 100 pounds each step echoing faintly in the otherwise quiet lobby. The overhead lights burned his eyes like miniature suns. His ears, usually flicking at the softest of sounds, were now pinned low, catching even the faintest hum of the barely functioning AC like a scream. His nine tails were sluggish behind him, curling loosely like smoke on a breeze and dragging against the floor. Good morning, Charlie sang as she bounced into the room, only to find Naruto slumped on the sofa, looking worse for wear. The princess approached the hungover Tenko, worry lining her soft features. Her posture stiffened slightly when she saw the bags under his eyes and the wince on his face. Are you okay, Naruto? She asked, worried about her business partner. Glancing up at her, he tried to muster a smile, but it came out lopsided and weak despite his best efforts. I went out with a friend I made. I might have overestimated my alcohol tolerance, he admitted, hoping Charlie wouldn't worry too much about him. She already had a lot going on. Her concern was replaced instantly with delight, however. You made a friend, she exclaimed, clasping her hands together. Happy that the newcomer to hell seemed to be adapting well. She had been worried that since he wasn't a demon, he would have some trouble fitting in here. Yeah, her name is Luna, she's a hellhound, Naruto replied, wondering what Charlie's reaction would be. From what he heard, imps and hellhounds weren't high on the totem pole here in hell. They were considered pretty much at the bottom of the social hierarchy. He wouldn't lie, he would be pretty disappointed if the princess looked down on them, too. But to his relief, Charlie's expression didn't falter. Whoa, really? Where'd you guys go? She asked, her tone still bright and unjudging, not bothered at all that the spiritual being had befriended a hellhound. Naruto pushed himself up, ignoring the pain coursing over his body. His muscles ached like he'd gone 10 rounds with a tailed beast. I think she said it was in gluttony. He answered, rubbing the back of his neck. Wait, so you can go to other rings then, Charlie realized aloud, her brows lifting in curiosity. Typically, sinners were bound to just the pride ring. But Naruto wasn't supposed to be in hell. I guess it makes sense, you're not a sinner after all, she concluded, her voice tinged with curiosity as she wondered what limits Naruto had while in hell. Did you get anyone to sign up by the way? She asked, a pleading look in her eyes. Seeing him shake his head, Charlie deflated, knowing that no one had decided to join them yet. Her hopeful energy dimmed for a moment, like a candle flickering in the wind. Naruto's eyes softened when he saw her deflate. Sorry, but we're just getting started, Naruto said, trying to get Charlie's spirits up. Soon we'll have every room here filled with sinners making their way out of hell, he told her, hugging her. Charlie's eyes widened at the embrace, but she smiled at the reassurance of her dream, hugging her fellow blonde back tightly. The hug lingered for a few seconds longer, her heart buoyed by his unshaken optimism and her cheeks slightly flushing at the contact. Yeah, she replied, happy that despite their little progress in their goal. Any plans for today? Charlie asked, wondering what the fox would be doing today. His clones were very useful for fixing things around the hotel, and she was sure he could have them handle advertising. Well, Blitzo wanted my help with some commissions they had on Earth. Wanna have a beach day after? Figured that you, and Veggie could enjoy some time at a beach or something, Naruto asked. As far as he knew, nothing was banning Charlie from leaving hell, and if Veggie went to Earth for a bit, well, no one had to know. Sure. Ooh, a day at the beach. I haven't gone to the beach since, well, I don't remember when I went last. She said, excited to finally be able to experience a proper beach day with friends, something she had never had a real chance to do. Her eyes sparkled as she twirled in place, imagining the feeling of warm sand between her toes and the light of the mortal world's sun against her skin, something she had only ever read about. Plus, she would get a chance to meet some of Naruto's other friends that he made in hell. Then I'll pick you two up once we finish with the less pleasant business, Naruto told her, not wanting Charlie to get involved in Blitzo's business. Mainly because Charlie had a positive view on humanity, and he was worried about how she'd react to IMP killing off a bunch of them, even if some of them deserved it. Oh, we won't be hanging out with your friends? Charlie asked, a bit disappointed. Naruto gave her a sympathetic smile. I think it would be a bit intimidating to have the Princess of Hell there to observe, he told her. Of course, even imps and hellhounds knew who Charlie was, even if the royal family wasn't as active as they really should have been. Plus, some of the stuff they're gonna be doing isn't exactly pretty, Naruto tried to explain. In his mind, it was for the best for everyone. Charlie rubbed her arm but trusted Naruto's word. She didn't want to get in the way of demons just trying to do their job. Despite how little her family did these days, to imps and other hellborn demons, she was still an authority figure. They might see her presence and get intimidated. I'm sure they would love you, but maybe you should meet them when you're not working. Something more casual? He asked, hoping that she would be able to meet them, just maybe not in the middle of their work. But, we'll go to the beach after. She asked to confirm, giving him a pleading puppy dog look that pierced his heart. Naruto smiled and nodded, yeah, we'll have a great time. He announced, knowing that he was strong enough to deal with anything that could come up if they went to the surface. He didn't know if hell had beaches of its own, but he figured that they might have a hard time bringing Veggie along to the other rings. Woo, I'll go tell Veggie. She's gonna be so excited. Charlie yelled before running off to inform the last of the three beings staying at the hotel about their plans to go to the beach and have some company bonding time. Naruto watched her go, a small chuckle escaping his lips. Her energy was infectious. Even with a soul-splitting hangover, she somehow made things feel a little brighter. I'm taking the limo, Naruto yelled out since he didn't feel like walking or flying today. He had been working hard the last few days and wanted to just kick his feet up and let someone else do the work. Okay. The limo pulled up in front of the office, getting the attention of the three demons who were mid-argument. The smooth growl of the engine echoed off the cracked pavement, and the luxurious black sheen of the limo stood out against the grimy urban hellscape like a gemstone in the dirt. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. The atmosphere shifted. Naruto couldn't help but sigh at whatever trouble Blitzo must have gotten himself into. He could already sense the tension from a distance, a fog of frustration, arrogance, and wounded pride hovering like storm clouds around the area. Might as well help him out, Naruto muttered as he opened the door and stepped out with a cool look on his face. His silhouette emerged from the shadows of the limo's interior, tails flaring softly in a breeze that didn't exist, golden hair glinting under the hellish sky. His posture was relaxed, confident, utterly unbothered by the growing commotion. The admission spoken with the resigned tone of someone who knew that personal decisions had ripple effects and that some might be a bit more explosive than others. Blitzo yelled when he saw Naruto stepping out of the limo. The pink demon beside him, Verosuke, looked down at him, brow raised, clearly annoyed at the sudden shift in his tone. One moment, he was cowardly when her hellhound got in his face, the next, he was puffing up like a peacock the moment his reinforcements arrived. Typical Blitzo. Luna poked her head out from behind the door of the van, eyes lighting up the moment they landed on the new arrival. She looked between the four, her tail twitching with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Part of her was still fangirling over Verosuke. Being in the presence of a literal celebrity wasn't something that wore off so easily. But at the same time, she was happy that Naruto had shown up. His presence was grounding for her. Comforting. Dangerous in the best way. Oh really? The dark gray furred hellhound said as he stepped between Naruto and his boss. Tex's voice was low-laced with condescension. He looked over the shorter blonde with a smirk on his face, sizing him up like a weak challenger in a bar fight. He asked, clearly underestimating the former shinobi. He practically looked like a human minus the tails. No horns, no claws, no wings, just a deceptively soft exterior. Someone he felt he could beat easily. Naruto wasn't as tall or as buff as Vortex, yet he didn't look even the slightest bit scared of the demon before him. He looked up into the hellhound's eyes, one eye sharp and wild like Luna's with a white iris over a red sclera, the other a clouded orb of white, blind and unmoving. A symbol of his past fights, and likely used to show just how tough he was. Depends, Naruto shrugged, his tone light, conversational. From the way that he positioned his body to the way that he spoke, nothing about him seemed to outwardly show that he was a threat to anyone here. But his eyes told a completely different story, pupils slitted and eyes glowing a bright orange. A small window to the vast ancient power that the blonde held. Luna watched with bated breath as the two faced off. Her body was tense, tail coiled tightly behind her. Naruto had captured her desire with his personality and power, but Vortex was ripped, and his vibes were immaculate. There was a moment, just a second, where even she wasn't sure who would win in a stare down. Oh. And what are you gonna do? Tex asked in a teasing voice as he bent down to Naruto's level, voice laced with mockery and overconfidence. Oh, Blitzo, maybe you should tell your friend to back off before Tex really messes him up, Verosuke added to her ex-boyfriend, her voice smug and taunting. Naruto didn't say anything, but a small smile drifted onto his face, then in knowing that he had the whole situation under his control. You want to know? He asked, the amusement in his voice carrying a dangerous undertone. Oh, enlighten me, hee, Tex replied, only for his torso to be torn open, his blood splattered across the parking lot. Where Naruto once stood was a massive fox larger than any building in the city, with a single claw piercing its chest. The monstrous fox lifted its body toward its titanic mouth before devouring him in a single bite. Then it all snapped back to Tex and Naruto staring at each other. A second later, the hellhound fell back, his whole body shaking in terror. His hands rushed toward his chest, desperate, frantic, feeling around for the hole that had been torn into him, only to find that he was completely okay. But the memory, what he saw, lingered in his brain. Sweat beaded on his furred brow. His heart thundered like a war drum. His breath hitched in his throat. Naruto crouched down to his left and smiled, voice barely above a whisper. Good puppy, he said before standing upright again, brushing imaginary dust off his jacket and walking past them toward an ecstatic Blitzo and a shell-shocked Verosuke. So what's the deal? He asked the two, tone casual, but eyes still glowing faintly from whatever power he'd just unleashed. This whore is stealing my parking spot. Blitzo yelled at the succubus, throwing his hands up in outrage like a man wronged by the universe itself. Shaking off the shock of seeing Vortex get dominated so easily, Verosuke gave Naruto a once-over. Her eyes slowly roamed across his frame, re-evaluating everything she thought she knew about him. No one would deny that he was handsome and powerful if the display of strength had been anything to go by. "Well, who is this handsome hunk?" she asked, brushing her hair back, the seductive glint in her eyes unmistakable. She wouldn't deny that Naruto was attractive, so she wouldn't mind a chance to jump on his bones if given a chance. "Name's Naruto Uzumaki," he introduced himself. His voice was even, but there was a faint edge of weariness in it. He was already tired of dealing with their petty drama. "Sue, you took his spot." "Well, we needed a parking spot and we found one. He should have gotten here earlier," she replied, crossing her arms defiantly. It was hell, and rules were rarely enforced in general. "This is our spot." Naruto tosses this lipstick-wearing cumdum's car out. Blitzo said, but froze when he saw the glare Naruto was giving him. The blonde's eyes sharpened, like twin suns focused to burn a single target. "Please," Blitzo added, shrinking back, ears pinned low in submission. "No, figure out your own shit. I'm here to help you guys with your jobs, not settle domestic disputes," Naruto denied. His voice was firm, unwavering. He wasn't gonna get involved in something stupid like this. Plus, he wasn't going to let Blitzo boss him around. Verosuke said, glad that Naruto didn't just wreck her car. She gave Blitzo a smirk of superiority before turning to leave. Looking back, she noticed that Tex was still on the ground in fear, pupils dilated and limbs twitching faintly. "Tex!" she yelled. The hellhound snapped out of his stupor, jerking upright like he'd been electrocuted. He stood back up and followed, giving one final glance at the nine-tailed blonde, the memory of his death still replaying in his mind. I wasted so much time with a bag of holes like that," Blitzo sighed as he watched the two walk away from them. Naruto rolled his eyes at the comment, muttering something under his breath about pot and kettle. As the two left, Luna pushed the door to the van wide open. Her claws scraped the metal as it swung out violently, eyes wide and tail wagging with unfiltered excitement. "You know Verosuke Mayday," she practically barked, her voice an octave higher than usual. Her pupils were wide, shimmering with star-struck disbelief. Blitzo looked back at his adopted daughter before turning his back on everyone with an annoyed look on his face at the resurgence of his past love life. "Oh yeah, we dated," he said, trying to shrug it off, though the bitterness practically dripped off his tongue. "Was that before or after she became a pop star?" Millie asked curiously, leaning forward like she was hearing the juiciest gossip of the year. "You dated a pop star?" Moxie questioned, his voice full of disbelief. His arms were flailing slightly as he looked between Luna and Blitzo, like he couldn't reconcile the image of his grumpy, violent boss with someone who had actually been in a serious relationship, let alone with someone famous. Why are you all acting like it's such a shock?" Blitzo grumbled, narrowing his eyes. Naruto raised an eyebrow, his tails curling around him like a silent audience waiting for the next punchline. "Hello. It's Verosuke Mayday. It's you. Is she blind? Suffering some sort of brain damage?" Moxie asked, getting a chuckle from the former shinobi, who had to cover his mouth to stifle a snort. "To be honest, I can't see you and her being in the same league, Blitzo," Naruto chimed in, tilting his head and letting his amusement show. His voice was teasing, but there was a glint of sincerity in his eyes. He couldn't picture it either. But he had to admit, the mental image of the little idiot with a bombshell like Verosuke was almost endearing. Perhaps there was more to her than just being a horny demon. Blitzo's glare could have ignited fire if looks could kill. "You all are making this into a way bigger deal than it needs to be. I don't pry into your personal lives," he snapped, waving his hands in the air. That statement was quickly rebuked by all parties around him. Blitzo very much pried into everyone's personal lives. "And I don't wanna hear it from you," Blitzo yelled, pointing at Naruto, his voice full of exasperation. He was still peeved about him bringing Luna home late, and some of the things she said during her sleep left little for his already overactive imagination as to what happened. Naruto put his hands up in mock innocence, not wanting any problems with the adoptive father of the girl he slept with. "Hey, she's a grown woman. She makes her own choices," he said coolly, although a flicker of guilt crossed his expression. He didn't want to turn this into a family drama. But he wouldn't deny that Luna was becoming something really special to him. "What was with her like?" Millie asked, her curiosity completely bypassing any sense of tact or timing. She tilted her head, genuinely intrigued. The casualness of her tone made it somehow even worse. Millie. Moxie yelled, shocked by what his wife had asked, his tiny hands thrown up as if asking the universe to explain how this was his life. What? You'd like to know what with Michael Crowfoot was like, she retorted with a smug look to which Moxie couldn't help but agree, blushing slightly. Naruto chuckled lowly, raising an eyebrow toward Luna, who was staring at the ground with a scowl that barely hid the pink tint growing beneath her fur. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He figured that she probably didn't like Blitzo knowing about their nightly activities the previous day. Look, just drop it. Millie, find us a temporary parking spot. Moxie, Luna, Naruto, let's go handle this shit, Blitzo ordered, his voice sharp with frustration as he stormed towards the building, leaving no room for argument. Naruto and Luna exchanged a knowing look, the hellhound rolling her eyes before following her boss. You think she saw me? I did my makeup shitty today. Luna muttered under her breath, clearly agitated. Her voice was tinged with worry and self-consciousness. It was something rare from the normally guarded and agitated hellhound. She had woken up late, and between being sore from the night before, her head hurting, and getting dressed, she didn't have much time to get ready. Naruto whispered into her ear without hesitation, elbowing her lightly. The comment made her ears flick instinctively. Luna gave him a glare that couldn't hide the faint blush painting her cheeks. She pulled out a cracked mirror and started to check her eyeliner and touch up her face. Naruto caught Blitzo glaring again, but neither he nor Luna seemed particularly interested in backing down. Watch out, Luna, Naruto said, grabbing her by the waist and pulling her aside before the distracted hellhound ran headfirst into Tex, who was waiting outside in the hallway. Her breath hitched from the sudden contact with her new lover. His hand was just slightly under her bust. She noticed how his hand lingered around her just a second longer than it needed to. An act that made her heart flutter. "Aight, big man, where is your bitch bag of an employer?" Blitzo asked, storming up to the much bigger resident of Hell. Vortex looked up at Naruto, who was casually staying back to let Blitzo handle things. "She's in her office," he said, turning his attention back to the larger of the two imps. "They didn't have room on the sushi floor, so we got one here. Cheaper too," he added honestly, though he did occasionally glance at Naruto with a level of respect and caution. "Oh, come on," Blitzo yelled, pissed that he was working across the hall from his ex. His voice echoed, filled with the dramatic agony of a man trapped in a hell of his own making. "Sorry man," Tex said before walking away, trying very hard not to make eye contact with Naruto again. "Sir, how about you let me go in and try and reason with them? I don't really listen to what is classified as pop genre music, so her status to me," Moxie started before Naruto started to tune him out and turned his attention to Luna. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, nudging her with his elbow. Luna smiled at the fox-tailed earthling, her ears drooping slightly with comfort. "I'm a bit sore, but yesterday was amazing," she replied honestly. "I wouldn't mind doing it again sometime," Luna added on, her voice lower, more vulnerable. She glanced at him from beneath her bangs, hoping that this wasn't a one-time thing and that maybe things could go further. Naruto smiled, giving her a peck on the cheek that made her tail swish once in surprise. "I'm down," he told her, meaning it. Luna smiled at the acceptance. It felt nice to be desired. Before anything else could be said, they heard Blitzo yell, "Oh, this won't stand." He roared as they saw the state that Moxie was in. His hair was messed up, his shirt untucked, and there was lipstick on his face, but anyone could tell that he hadn't had a good time with his fellow demons. It was clear that whatever went down in the office wasn't exactly consensual on his part. To Naruto's surprise, he had never seen Blitzo this angry before. It did warm his heart, though, that despite how he treated Moxie sometimes, he did care for his fellow imp at the end of the day. Naruto and Luna followed after Blitzo just in case things turned for the worse. Naruto was ready to evaporate everyone in that office if things went down. His chakra pulsed just beneath the surface, a vast ocean of power that few in hell could truly comprehend in scope. One of the succubi moaned as she looked at the three. "Is this imp boy starting a demon duel?" she asked her boss. "I think he is," Verosuka replied, smirking as she leaned forward to Blitzo's level. "What's the game then, Blitzo?" she asked, using his full name like a dagger, knowing well that he hated when people added the O to the end of it. Every year, USTD spreaders go up top for easy pickings while spring break is the prime time for crimes of all kinds. I say that you bitches can't as many people as we can off by the end of the day, Blitz challenged them, a smug look on his face. Naruto blinked slowly, staring at him. He wondered if Blitzo had enough contracts for that. The opposing group replied by laughing in his face before settling down. Oh, you're serious. Game on, bitch, Verosuke said, leaning in just for the last word, right into his ear. Naruto watched as the group left before looking back at Verosuke. He didn't really sense anything that evil about her, she seemed more vindictive against Blitzo than actually malicious. However, his stare was caught by the pop star who walked up to him, her hips swaying like she was born to move that way. Something caught your eye? She asked, pushing her plump breasts up with a subtle arch of her back. Naruto rolled his eyes at the attempt to seduce him. I'm just a bit curious. You're the first succubus I've met in hell, he admitted honestly. He didn't really have any reason to lie to her. Oh, new sinner? Verosuke asked, figuring that if he was going to be cordial, then she might as well respond in kind. She didn't have a problem with him, unlike Blitzo. If anything, he seemed rather well-natured compared to the rabble she was used to. Not a sinner, actually, Naruto replied, getting a few shocked looks from the succubi in the room. I guess humans would consider me something between a spirit and a deity. Not exactly sure myself, to be honest, he told them. He had the power to reshape the world if he got serious, but he didn't know if he would be classified as a god officially, even if some humans prayed to him. Verosuke scoffed at that. Really? A god? She asked, not believing him. Naruto shrugged in response, as I said, I'm not really sure. I'm just me, he replied, not insulted by the response. As for what I'm doing with them, well, I think they're fun and decent demons, Naruto said, answering her other question. What about you? Verosuke looked away at the not-so-subtle attempt to dig some info about her past with Blitzo. We dated, she said, rubbing the spot where she had a crossed-out tattoo of Blitzo's name in a heart. Naruto looked at her with a sense of pity. There was as deep a pain there. A severe wound that hadn't fully healed yet. He wondered what Blitzo had done to her in the past. She was antagonistic towards them, but from what he was seeing, it probably stemmed from something Blitzo had done. If you think Blitzo is a decent demon, you're wrong. Someone who will use and throw you away, the succubus said, thinking back to all the shit Blitzo put her through. Naruto thought about what she'd said. Blitzo wasn't exactly the best person he'd ever met, but he was far from the worst. From what he gathered, hell was home to a lot of horrid individuals who had done terrible things to many people for years before their deaths. And when it came to the natives, there was little in terms of law enforcement. Maybe you're right. He probably was horrible. But I've always believed in giving people a chance, Naruto said as he turned to leave. Verosuke rolled her eyes as she watched the blonde walk out of her office. Looking at Vortex, she noticed that he was oddly quiet the whole time. It almost seemed like he relaxed the moment Naruto left the room. You okay? She asked her hellhound. Tex looked a bit uncomfortable at the question. When he showed up, I felt like I was gonna die. No, I saw myself die. Whatever he is, he's not your run-of-the-mill demon, he admitted, recalling how it felt when he confronted Naruto. The vision of his own death was still fresh in his mind. How real it all felt. You actually believe he's a god? She asked, concerned that her employee might have gone mad. Look Veer, I've met some powerful demons. I've even met one of the sins before. But that man is something else. Tex's words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, even Verosuke didn't have a snarky comeback. Her lips pressed into a thin line, eyes narrowing faintly as she looked out toward the hallway Naruto had exited through. Naruto. If you enjoyed this dark beginning and want the next part soon, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support decides how fast part 2 comes out. I'll see you in the next chapter of this forbidden destiny. Fire.